Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're really going deep. We're going to take a look at Bob Camblin,
Bob Camblin, yeah.
the artist. And we've got a lot of different sources. We've got quotes directly from him, excerpts from a biography, a book
Two
review.
book reviews,
Oh,
actually.
two book reviews,
Yeah,
okay. A forward and a review.
yeah. The Art of Everything, and then Zen and the Art of Enlightenment.
Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, and then a YouTube video.
Wow. Someone did an analysis of his lithograph, a Texas dandelion.
That is a lot. That's a lot of different sources to sort of synthesize, to pull out, what exactly did Bob Camblin think about art? How did his ideas change over time? And what are some of the recurring themes that we see throughout all of this material?
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this deep dive so interesting is it's not just like one book and we're going to unpack it. There's so much different material. There are so many different threads that we can pull on. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and he's one of those artists where I think, like, you hear his name and you see maybe one or two of his artworks, and you get a sense of, like, okay, this guy's a little bit out there,
Hmm.
you know. But then, like, I mean, I get the sense that if you dig deep, you're going to find a lot more than you might initially uh, expect.
Yeah, and I think even starting with his quotes, right? You pull some of these up and you get a sense of like, what kind of person was this guy?
Yeah, there are some quotes that really jump out, right? Just like, fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps. That's sort of a funny quote.
Yeah, very, very flippant.
Yeah, and then you get this very deep kind of philosophical quote. Um, Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. And I'm reading this, and I'm thinking, like, this guy was all over the place in terms of his thinking.
Yeah, but it's not, he's all over the place, but I feel like the thread that connects it all is that he's trying to like bring the ordinary and the profound together. There's this sense of like anything can be beautiful, anything can be magical if you look at it the right way. Even the science of the atom, you get what you need. There's something philosophical in that. And then, magic is obviously there's a philosophical spiritual element to that. And he sees art as kind of being the bridge between these two things.
Yeah, yeah. And there's this like he really wants to find this kind of like perfectly average view. And he has this quote, "It's taken so long to achieve a perfectly average view of things." He's not like anti-science or anti-magic. He's like there's a place for both.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a really important insight into his thinking. He's not trying to choose sides. He's trying to find this kind of like middle ground, this place where those two seemingly opposing forces can coexist. And that's why he's so drawn to like the color gray, right? Intensely bright gray, he calls it.
Yeah. And he has this other quote, "Miracles come from common sense," which I think is really interesting. I don't know what he meant by that, but it's very intriguing.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what did he consider to be common sense? Was it like, just the everyday observations that we all have, or was it something deeper, something more intuitive?
Yeah. And another thing that really stood out to me, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, is the recurring like "and yet" that we see throughout these
Oh
quotes.
yeah, that's everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. So, "Bright day and I soar.
Mm.
How cruel that my soul is attached to this earth, and yet." And then there's in the balance, patience, and yet freedom, and silence and reality, which I have no idea what he meant by that. But I mean, is this like, is he like, yeah, is he wrestling with these opposing forces?
I think he is. And I think that's part of his process. It's not about finding a definitive answer. It's about holding these two things in tension with each other. It's like he sees both sides of the coin and he's trying to find that balance point.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting because he's not, it doesn't feel like he's um, like arguing, like internally arguing with himself. It's just like you get the sense that he's just like observing this tension and just letting it be.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes his work so powerful. It's not preachy. It's not like, he's trying to convince you of anything. He's just presenting these observations, these insights, and letting you draw your own conclusions.
Right. And he also, he mentions art for survival's sake, which I thought was a really interesting concept. And then this like need to step off the train of thought.
Yeah, and I think that's part of what we were talking about earlier. Like he's not just interested in art as a kind of like intellectual exercise.
Yeah.
It's something that's vital to him. It's something that he needs to do to survive. And to step off that train of thought, I think is about like accessing a different way of thinking, a different way of being in the world.
Yeah. And then we see like these little almost like haiku-like observations, like 3 cottonwood trees, dense cluster of new branches, now with them gone. Look.
Yeah, it's like little snapshots, little moments in time that he's capturing. And they're so simple, but they're so evocative. They really paint a picture in your mind.
Yeah, yeah, and there's this little anecdote. We talked of changing the world. He listened, then took 21 cents from his coin purse to pay for his coffee and left. I just thought that was so funny. Like it's so like anticlimactic in a way, but it's also very telling about his way of thinking.
Yeah, it's like there's this juxtaposition between these grand ideas of changing the world and then just the very mundane act of paying for a cup of coffee. And it makes you wonder, like, is he skeptical of these grand ideas? Does he think that real change happens in these small everyday moments?
Right. And then he has like a this really interesting observation. Not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze. And I read that and was like, oh yeah, that's so true. Like he's really paying attention to these very subtle details in nature.
Yeah, and it's like he's not just observing these things, he's feeling them. He's really in tune with the natural world in a way that I think a lot of us aren't. And that's what makes his work so compelling, I think.
Yeah. And he even directly addresses Mother Nature in one of his quotes. He's like, I wonder what Mother Nature thinks of this new work. I did ask, but she didn't answer.
Yeah, that's so playful, right? It's like he has this personal relationship with nature, almost like a conversation that's happening.
Right, right. And I love that. I love that sense of playfulness, and you can really see it in a lot of his other quotes as well. But let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of his thoughts on arguments and communication.
Okay, yeah, he definitely has some strong opinions on that.
Yeah, yeah. So he has this one quote: "If you argue or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate." And I thought that was so like profound.
It's a really challenging statement. It makes you question what real communication actually is. Is it just about exchanging information? Or is it about something deeper, something more about connection and understanding?
Right, right. And then there's this really interesting metaphor. The gate stays open, the fence is broken. He keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry, yet he has faith. He looks in all directions. If he could only see all around all at once.
Yeah, it's such a vivid image, right? And it makes you wonder, like, what is he searching for? Is it some kind of like artistic truth? Is it some kind of like spiritual enlightenment? Or is it just like the act of searching itself that's important to him?
Right. And the fact that he doesn't know what he's looking for, but he still keeps looking, I think is really telling.
Yeah, it speaks to a kind of like faith or trust in the process, right? Like, even if you don't know where you're going, there's value in just keep moving forward.
Yeah. And he touches on this difference between revolution and evolution, suggesting that like revolution brings changes, but evolution leads to understanding.
Yeah, and he seems to believe that a future balance will be found within individual minds, not through some kind of like grand societal upheaval.
Right. It's very much an internal process for him.
Yeah, it's about individual transformation leading to a kind of like collective shift in consciousness.
Yeah. And then he has this really simple but really powerful statement. You never miss the water until the well runs dry.
Yeah, it's so true, right? We often take the things that are most important to us for granted until we lose them.
Right. And you see this kind of like appreciation for the simple things, the everyday things throughout a lot of his quotes. He's talking about nature. He's talking about, just like these little moments, these little observations. And it's clear that he's really present in those moments.
Yeah, and it's like he's trying to find beauty in the mundane, that even in the most ordinary things, there's something extraordinary if you just look closely enough.
Right, right. And we see those like haiku-like observations again. 6 starlings sitting among broken branches. Look, no buds are growing. And every day the clouds circle our tower as if we, again, were the intruders.
Yeah, and these images, they're so simple, but they're so powerful. They evoke this sense of like time passing, the cycle of nature, our place in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, yeah. And this one really stood out to me. There, beneath those rocks, poor fish, trapped by the changing tides. So much like us. It's like he sees this parallel between the fish and humanity. Like we're all kind of like trapped in this cycle of life and death and the forces beyond our control.
Yeah, it's a really powerful image of like our shared vulnerability, our shared experience of being subject to these larger forces that we can't really control.
Right, right. And he also has these like whimsical, almost like surreal thoughts, like it wouldn't be so bad to come back as a fly if you knew your body would shine in the sun that way. And this beautiful image of darning needles sew shimmer-lined tapestries of blue, green, and white bands.
Yeah, it's like he's letting his imagination run wild,
Right.
right? He's exploring these fantastical possibilities, finding beauty in the unexpected.
Right, right. And some of his shorter observations are really like cryptic and evocative, like uh, canvas rectangles, summer light, calligraphy, mystic incomplete, or eater of Christians, chimera, Byzantium, warm, cold children's chair. And I'm reading these and I'm like, what? What does he mean?
Yeah, it's like he's speaking in code almost. Like
Yeah.
he's using these fragments of images and ideas to create this kind of like personal mythology.
Yeah, yeah. It's very much like, you have to kind of like piece it together yourself. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of what makes his work so compelling.
Yeah, it's like he's inviting you into his world, but he's not giving you all the answers. You have to
Yeah.
kind of like fill in the blanks yourself.
Right, right. And then we have his seasonal and elemental observations like uh, veil of August's heat weaves the artist dragonfly, and the very dramatic fall, wax and feathers, flowers of burning petals, raw Icarus.
Yeah, it's like he's capturing the essence of these seasons, these elements, and he's not afraid to be dramatic.
Yeah.
He's really embracing the the grandeur of nature.
Right, and he's also talking about like the sandpiper's dance
Yeah.
and summer waves and then a sinking shell. So it's not just like, these big dramatic moments, but it's also these smaller, more intimate observations of nature.
Yeah, and it shows his range, right? Like
Right.
he can appreciate the beauty of both the grand and the small.
Right, right. And then contrasting with that, we get these more personal reflections like 7 years deprived, my dear, for economy. And the strange mirror, bright face cupped between my hands makes me seem so young.
Yeah, and these are really touching, I think. They give you a glimpse into his personal life, his struggles, his vulnerabilities.
Right. And they make him seem more human. Like
Mm.
he's not just this like, abstract artist philosopher guy. He's a real person who's experienced, hardship and loss and joy.
Right, and it makes his work even more relatable, I think, because you can see that these experiences are informing his art.
Yeah, yeah. And he touches on like themes of white magic and hidden fears
Yeah.
and this image of the egg and brown leaves that nothing changes and the really intriguing minuscule dragons observed by Buddha spiders.
Okay.
And it's like he's blending the mystical and the psychological and the natural world all together.
Yeah, and it's like he's seeing these connections everywhere. He's seeing magic in the everyday, he's seeing the psychological and the natural world, and it makes you think, like, is this how he saw the world all the time? Was he just constantly seeing these connections and patterns?
Right, right. And the quote about the egg, I think, is really interesting because it's like, is he talking about like the fear of change, or is he talking about like the comfort of routine,
Mm.
or is it something else entirely?
Yeah, and it's up to you to decide. He's not giving you the answer. He's just presenting the image, the idea, and letting you draw your own conclusions.
Right, right. And then he has this line, "Dragon never lived
Yeah.
on paper or flowers," which it was kind of like a meta comment on art itself.
Yeah, it makes you think about the nature of representation, right? Like, is art just a pale imitation of reality, or can it be something more?
Yeah, yeah. And then there's this rather evocative and slightly unsettling image. Jawless monster, cold marble sundial of the church. Do the old men sleep?
Yeah, that one's a bit creepy. It makes you think about time passing, mortality, the silence of death.
Yeah, yeah. And the church imagery, I think, is really interesting because he's not like overtly religious, but there's definitely a spiritual element to his work.
Right, and I think he's interested in the power of symbols and rituals, regardless of whether or not you believe in the specific religion or ideology behind them.
Right, right. And we see that in some of his other quotes as well, like blue pictures pulsing, the faded image breathes once, the tattooed hand waits, and seed pod, dragonfly, shriveled weed, or living thing, stirred by wind or God.
Yeah, and these images are so sensory, so dreamlike. It's like he's tapping into this kind of like subconscious realm where logic and reason don't necessarily apply.
Right. And the question of God, I think, is really interesting because he's not like saying that God exists or doesn't exist.
Hmm.
He's just like presenting the possibility.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes his work so intriguing. He's not trying to give you answers, he's trying to make you ask questions.
Right, right. And moving into some more abstract and metaphorical quotes, he says, purple canals, golden palazzi, the rain muffles her crying. And on Longboat, Memory of Summer Walks. I hear this is gone.
Yeah, these are really beautiful and melancholic. They evoke this sense of loss, of time passing, of things fading away.
Right. And the imagery is so vivid, the purple canals, the golden palazzi, the summer walks. It's like he's painting these pictures with words.
Yeah, and it makes you feel those emotions. You feel the sadness, the nostalgia, the longing.
Yeah, yeah. And then he has this really powerful statement. The painted eye sees more than mine, and God damn it, I see nothing yet.
Yeah, that's a really honest and vulnerable statement, I think. He's acknowledging his own limitations, his own blindness, but there's also this sense of hope, like he's still striving to see more, to understand more.
Right, right. And this quote, I think, is a metaphor for the creative process itself. This strange device whirled by a figure of my mind, a beautiful dance.
Yeah, it's like he's describing this internal process of creation where ideas and images are swirling around, coming together, forming something new.
Right, and it's not a linear process, it's a dance.
Yeah, it's fluid, it's dynamic, it's unpredictable.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then who could forget gargoyles gargling water from Gothic churches? You missed me that time.
Yeah, that one's just pure fun, right? Like he's winking at you, letting you know that he doesn't take himself too seriously.
Right. And this one I think is really poignant. Off the shore, fragments of a memory are found, bones of Icarus.
Hmm.
He's connecting this very personal experience of memory with this ancient myth.
Yeah, and it elevates the personal to the level of myth, right? It makes you think about the universality of these experiences, how we're all connected through these shared stories.
Right, right. And then this really vivid image, hammock facing west, fingers knit to block the sun, become burning twigs.
Yeah, that's so visceral, so intense. It's like you can feel the heat of the sun, the pain of the burning twigs.
Right. And then he moves into this idea that nostalgia, like guests and fish, shouldn't be kept too long. The dredging of memory should only function if it serves to jog the archetype crevices of the reptilian brain.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective on memory, right? Like, it's not just about dwelling on the past, it's about using the past to understand the present.
Right. And the reptilian brain, I think, is a really interesting concept. It's like he's talking about this primal, instinctual part of ourselves.
Yeah, and he seems to believe that art can tap into that part of us. It can bypass our rational minds and speak to something deeper.
Yeah, yeah. And he declares the artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed, except so much as he desires it.
Yeah, it's a very strong statement of artistic independence.
Yeah.
He's saying that the artist is beholden to no one except to their own creative vision.
Right. And he even muses, we may be moving to a participatory type of art, which, this was written a while ago, but it seems very prescient now.
Yeah, it's like he was anticipating the rise of interactive art, performance art, all these forms of art that break down the traditional barriers between artist and audience.
Right, right. And his thoughts on religion are really interesting, too. Religion, belief. If I believe in ghosts, I don't have to see one. If I believe it's art, then it is. If I believe that I am completely belief, then I can't be convinced I'm not.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that belief is a powerful force that can shape our reality. And it's not just about religion, it's about everything. If we believe something strongly enough, it becomes true for us.
Right, right. And then he notes that faith can aid and hinder. So can discipline, so can communication, so can being in Camblin circa 1968. And I just thought that was such a balanced view.
Yeah.
He's not saying that these things are good or bad. He's just saying that they can have both positive and negative effects.
Yeah, it's a really nuanced perspective, right? It's not about absolutes. It's about understanding the complexities of these different forces.
Right, right.
Okay.
And he offers these very concise statements. Art is and it isn't, and now everyone knows. And love art.
Yeah, those are really provocative, right? They make you think about the nature of art, the nature of love. Are they the same thing? Or are they different?
Right. And but then he follows up by warning against confusing making out with love and feeling good with art.
Yeah, it's like he's cautioning us against mistaking the superficial for the real thing.
Right. Like just because something feels good doesn't mean it's art. And just because you have a physical connection with someone doesn't mean you're in love.
Yeah, it's about going deeper, looking beyond the surface.
Right, right. And he introduces this idea of resist and submit, held in perfect balance, and then this figure 4 sequence.
Yeah.
4 times into the thing and 3 times back again. Stay out the last, if lucky.
Yeah, that's a really interesting metaphor, right? It could be about the creative process. It could be about life in general. It's about this cycle of engagement and retreat, of trying and failing and trying again.
Right, right. And the importance of knowing when to stop, when to stay out the last.
Yeah, that's key. Sometimes you have to know when to walk away, when to let go.
Right, right. And this, I think, is really important advice. Don't let the demon of being right get in. Flow and think of what you are doing, not what you plan to do. Step off the train of thought.
Yeah, it's a reminder to be present, to focus on the process, not the outcome, and to not get too attached to our own ideas. Sometimes the best way to create is to just let go and see what happens.
Right, right. And he has this rather wry observation. Historians love artistic madness when it isn't alive and well and attending meetings.
Yeah, it's a funny line, but it also makes you think about how society often romanticizes artists after they're dead. While they're alive, they're often seen as eccentric, difficult, even crazy. But after they're gone, they become these geniuses that we celebrate.
Right. And it makes you wonder, like, are we really appreciating artists while they're still alive? Or are we just waiting for them to die so we can put them on a pedestal?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask ourselves.
Right, right. And he firmly believes that we can train ourselves to open, instead of close, the circuits of perception.
Yeah, and that's a really hopeful message, I think. It's saying that we're not stuck with the way we see the world. We can learn to see things differently, to be more open, more receptive.
Right. And he draws a distinction between believing and knowing, aligning mystics with the latter through a direct personal experience that logic alone can't quite reach.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that there's a difference between intellectual understanding and experiential knowing.
Mm.
You can read about something in a book, but that's not the same as actually experiencing it for yourself.
Right, right. And he has this rather provocative statement. History is believable when it is creative.
Yeah, it makes you think about how history is often written by the victors. It's a narrative, a story that's being told, and there's always an element of creativity involved in that storytelling.
Right. And it makes you wonder, like, how much of history is actually true and how much of it is just a story that we've been told.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask.
Right, right. And then he has this really beautiful quote. Awareness can soften the shock. Familiarity allows us to participate. Creativity allows us to go beyond.
Yeah, it's like he's outlining a path to enlightenment almost. You start with awareness, which helps you to deal with the challenges of life. Then you move into familiarity, which allows you to connect with others and participate in the world around you. And finally, you reach creativity, which allows you to transcend your limitations and create something new.
Right, right. And it's a cyclical process.
Whoa.
Creativity can lead back to awareness, which can lead back to familiarity, and so on.
Yeah, it's a beautiful cycle.
Right, right. And he sees cynicism as a type of creativity gone destructive and ego-oriented.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. Cynicism can be a way of protecting yourself from disappointment, but it can also be a way of shutting yourself off from the world.
Right. And it can be very self-indulgent. It can be a way of feeling superior to others.
Yeah, and it's not very productive. It doesn't lead to
Yep.
anything positive.
Right, right.
Right.
And he laments that we all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important distinction. We live in a world where we're bombarded with information, but how much that information do we really understand? How much of it do we really know?
Right. And he's saying that knowing is something deeper than just understanding. It's about having a direct experience, a personal connection with something.
Yeah, it's about feeling it in your gut, not just in your head.
Right, right. And he introduces this concept of pushing up, this idea of slow growth through consistent effort and accepting the accumulation of small things without self-blame.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important message for anyone who's trying to create something. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day and doing the work, even when it's hard.
Right. And it's about being kind to yourself,
Yeah.
not beating yourself up when you make mistakes.
Yeah, because mistakes are inevitable. It's part of the process.
Right, right. And then he has this, like, seemingly paradoxical framing. Draw, teach, search, reveal.
Yeah, it makes you think, like, how are these things connected? Is he saying that drawing can lead to teaching, which can lead to searching, which can lead to revealing, or is it
Right.
something else entirely?
Right. And it's interesting because all of those words are like verbs,
Yeah.
they're all like actions.
Yeah, it's like he's saying that the creative process is an active one. It's not about passively waiting for inspiration to strike. It's about going out and doing something, engaging with the world.
Right, right. And he calls for a return to a naive approach to art, and he's critical of the seduction by history, critics, and a very affluent but weird culture. And he has this really interesting statement: identification is the aesthetic.
Yeah, and I think what he's saying is that the most important thing about art is the personal connection that you have with it. It's not about what the critics say or what the art historians say or what the market says. It's about how the art makes you feel, how it resonates with you on a personal level.
Right,
Right.
right. And he famously quipped, "A critic is a legless man who teaches running."
Yeah, that's a classic line. And it's so true, It's easy to criticize something from the sidelines, but it's a lot harder to actually create something yourself.
Right, and it's especially hard to teach something that you can't do yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. And he talks about the innate need to make marks before weapons, need, and enjoyment as children, letters and numbers from pictures, nonverbal in a time of many words.
Yeah, and I think what he's saying is that art is a fundamental human need. It's not just something that we do for fun or for decoration or for profit. It's something that's hardwired into our brains. It's a way of expressing ourselves, of communicating with each other, of making sense of the world.
Right, right. And he contrasts intention,
Mhm.
forced, studies quantity, not quality,
Right.
suggesting a real problem with artistic production that's driven by external pressures or market demands rather than genuine creative exploration.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. A lot of art these days is driven by the market, by the need to sell, by the need to be successful, and that can really stifle creativity, I think.
Right, because you're not creating for yourself anymore, you're creating for someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. And then he has this really funny analogy. Artists help historians the same way adults help children look for Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's a funny image, but it also makes a serious point. Artists are often creating work that's very personal, very intimate, and they're not necessarily thinking about how their work is going to be interpreted by historians years later.
Right, they're just trying to express themselves, to capture something that's meaningful to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, right. And he observes that facility